In the shadow of a dark medieval prison, a woman's voice echoed through the cold stone walls. It was a voice that would not be silenced, even as flames licked at the parchment of her banned book. This was the voice of Marguerite Porete, a brave and rebellious mystic who dared to challenge the authority of the church. Marguerite was a Beguine, a member of a unique spiritual movement that allowed women to live together in communities, free from the strict confines of convent life. These women dedicated themselves to prayer, charity, and a deep, personal connection with God. But Marguerite's path was not an easy one. Her writings, filled with powerful and erotic imagery of divine love, threatened the established order of the Church. Born in Hainault, Belgium, Marguerite lived a life of wandering and contemplation. She wrote a book called The Mirror of Simple Annihilated Souls, which described the soul's journey to merge with God. Her words were not just a testament to her faith, but a challenge to the male-dominated world of medieval theology. Marguerite believed that the soul could connect with God directly, without the need for priests or the Church's rituals. This was a dangerous idea in a time when the Church held immense power over people's lives. In 1306, Marguerite was arrested and her book was publicly condemned and burned. Despite the support of some churchmen, including a friar, a monk, and a theologian, the authorities saw her as a threat. They feared that her ideas might spread and undermine the Church's authority. Marguerite refused to back down. She was arrested again in 1308 and spent over a year in prison. During her trial, she remained defiant, refusing to apologize or renounce her beliefs. She argued that only God had true power, and that the Church's earthly justice was meaningless. Marguerite's accusers twisted her words and found 15 points in her book that they deemed heretical. They quoted her, saying, "Theologians and other clerics will have no understanding of this book at all, unless they proceed humbly and let love and faith elevate them above reason." For the medieval theologians, reason was supreme, and Marguerite's emphasis on love and faith was seen as a direct challenge to their authority. Even with a defender like Geert of Cressenossart, who believed in her true adherence to God, Marguerite could not escape the harsh judgment of the Church. In 1310, she was declared a relapsed heretic and sentenced to death. On June 1, 1310, Marguerite was burned at the stake. The crowd that gathered to witness her execution was moved by her courage and steadfastness. They wept as she faced her fate with dignity and grace. Marguerite's death did not silence her ideas. Her book survived in various translations and continued to inspire others for centuries. The Beguines, despite facing increasing scrutiny, persevered. In 1318, Pope John XXII acknowledged that many Beguines led lives of virtue, but he also warned against those who spread false teachings. The last known Beguine died in 2013, over 700 years after Marguerite's death, a testament to the enduring spirit of these women. Marguerite Porete's story is a powerful reminder of the courage and strength of those who challenge the status quo. Her life and death continue to resonate, a symbol of the human spirit's unyielding quest for truth and freedom. Birgitta of Sweden was a remarkable woman who lived in the 14th century. Born into a powerful family, she was destined for a life of influence and faith. Even before her birth, legend has it that she saved her mother from a dangerous storm at sea. When she was born, a priest had a vision of the Virgin Mary saying, "A daughter is born, whose voice will be heard throughout the world with admiration." Birgitta's early life was filled with religious experiences. At 7, she claimed to have met the Virgin Mary, who helped her with embroidery. At 10, she had a vision of Christ being crucified, which deeply moved her. Her mother died when she was young, and her Aunt Katarina took care of her. Despite her young age, she married Ulf Gudmarsson at 13. Their marriage started as a chaste companionship, and they had 8 children. Birgitta valued education and ensured her children received a good religious upbringing. Birgitta's life was closely tied to the Swedish royal court. She advised King Magnus Eriksson and his wife, Blanche, on moral and religious matters. She was known for her direct and honest advice, once warning the king's brother that he would not live long if he did not change his ways. Her husband, Ulf, was a judge and a member of the king's council, which gave Birgitte a significant influence. Pilgrimage was a significant part of Birgitta's life. Her family had a tradition of traveling to holy sites, and she continued this by making pilgrimages to places like Trondheim and Santiago de Compostela. After her husband's death, she founded the Order of the Holy Savior, also known as the Birgittine Order, in 1346. This order was unique because it was the first from Northern Europe, and focused on both men and women, with an abbess leading the community. Her daughter, Katarina, later became the abbess of this order. Birgitta's religious experiences were profound. She claimed to have over 700 mystical visions, which she recorded in her Revelations. These visions included messages from God, Christ, the Virgin Mary, and various saints. Her writings were copied and translated into Latin, becoming widely read and influential. In 1349, she moved to Rome to seek papal approval for her order. Despite initial reluctance, Pope Urban V eventually approved it. While in Rome, Birgitta became a respected figure, known for her charity and care for the poor. She also engaged in church politics, advocating for reform and urging leaders to act with integrity. Her visions often contained political insights, and she even predicted events like the Black Plague and the death of Pope Clement VI. She was a strong voice against corruption, both in the church and among secular authorities. Birgitta's influence extended beyond religious matters. She advocated for the return of the papacy to Rome from Avignon, which was accomplished in 1367. She also encouraged her children to join her on pilgrimages, including a trip to the Holy Land. Her life and teachings emphasized the importance of family, education, and moral living. After her death in 1373, Birgitta's remains were returned to Sweden, where they are still venerated. Her revelations became widely known and were translated into many languages. The Birgittine Order spread across Europe, with houses established in various countries. In England, the Sion Abbey, founded in 1415, was a notable example of her influence. Birgitta's legacy is significant. She showed that a married woman with children could achieve sainthood through her devotion and action. Her life and teachings inspired many, including Marjorie Kemp, who saw Birgitta as a role model. Despite some criticisms, Birgitta was canonized as a saint in 1391, and later became the patron saint of Sweden and one of the patron saints of Europe. Her story continues to inspire and influence people to this day. Christine de Pizan was a young woman living in Paris during the late 14th century. She was born in Venice, Italy in 1364, and moved to France when she was just 4 years old. Her father, Thomas, was a court astrologer to King Charles V, and he encouraged her to study and learn, which was unusual for a girl at the time. Christine became well educated and familiar with the royal court, where she met princesses and noblewomen. At 15, Christine married Etienne de Castel, a scholar and financial secretary to the king. They had 3 children and lived a happy, comfortable life. Christine's father and husband both supported her education and intellectual pursuits. However, their lives took a tragic turn when the king died, and Christine's father lost his job and soon after his life. Christine's husband, Etienne, also fell ill and died of the plague when he was only 34, leaving Christine a widow at 25 with 3 young children to care for. Christine was devastated by the loss of her husband and the financial difficulties that followed. She had no knowledge of how to manage the household finances, which her husband had always handled. This made her situation even more challenging. She was cheated by people who claimed false debts, and she realized the importance of women being educated in financial matters. Despite her grief, Christine knew she had to find a way to support her family. With her background in literature and education, Christine decided to become a writer. She started by copying manuscripts as a scribe, but soon she began writing her own works. She wrote poems, letters, and books, and her talent and hard work led her to become the first professional woman writer in Europe. Her writings often addressed the injustices faced by women and challenged the negative stereotypes about women that were common in literature at the time. One of her most famous works is The Book of the City of Ladies, where she creates a symbolic city inhabited by famous women from history and mythology. In this book, Christine defends the virtues of women and argues that they are capable of great achievements. She wrote about the importance of education for women and the need for women to be treated with respect and equality. Despite the challenges she faced, Christine de Pizan persevered and became a celebrated author. Her work not only provided for her family, but also inspired other women to pursue their own intellectual and creative pursuits. Christine's life and writings continue to be studied and admired today, and she is remembered as a pioneering voice for women's rights and equality. Christine de Pizan was a brave and talented writer who lived in France during the Middle Ages. Many women had written before her, but most of them were either part of the church or from noble families. They didn't need to be paid for their work because they had other means of support. Christine, however, was different. She was the first woman known to be paid for her writing. Christine's journey began with a series of letters she wrote to Jeanne de Montreuil, a secretary to the king. The letters were about a famous French poem called The Romance of the Rose, which many people found entertaining. The poem had characters like jealous husband and reason, and it portrayed women in a very negative way, suggesting they were unfaithful and deceitful. Christine strongly disagreed with these ideas. She believed the women she knew, and indeed all women, were not like that at all. So she decided to speak out and challenge the poem. Christine and Jeanne engaged in a public debate through their letters. Christine was fearless and called out the poem's author for spreading lies about women. She wrote with wit and sarcasm, turning the tables on those who criticized women. For example, she said that it was less bad to be deceived than to deceive. Christine's arguments were so powerful that she became famous. She even compiled the letters and presented them to the French queen, Isabelle de Bavière, in 1402. One of Christine's most famous works is The Book of the City of Ladies, written between 1404 and 1405. In this book, Christine created an allegorical city where three personified figures, reason, rectitude, and justice, help her build a city of worthy women. The city is a place where only the best stories about women are told, and it is a symbol of the strength and virtue of women throughout history. Christine was very involved in the creation of this book, carefully overseeing the scribes and artists to ensure that her vision was perfectly realized. Christine's work was widely read and respected. She wrote many other books, including The Book of Three Virtues, which guided women on how to behave in their culture. Her books were discussed throughout France and even in other countries. Christine's son became a royal secretary to the future King Charles VII, and she herself had to flee to a convent in Poissy when Paris fell to English troops in 1418. During her lifetime, Christine saw the rise of a young woman who embodied the qualities she admired most. This woman was Joan of Arc, a brave and devout shepherdess who led the French army to victory. Christine wrote a poem in 1429 praising Joan's bravery and the honor she brought to all women. In the chaotic times of the 100 Years' War, Joan of Arc was a beacon of hope. She was born in 1412 in a small village in France, and grew up doing housework and learning to spin and sew. At age 13, she started hearing voices from saints, including Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret. These voices told her about the dire state of France, and inspired her to help the future King Charles VII. Joan left her home, defying her father's threats, to join the French army. She dressed as a man for practical reasons, and to protect herself from harm. Joan convinced the nobleman Robert de Baudricourt to support her, and he provided her with a horse, armor, and a small group of men. She predicted the location of a hidden sword, which was found, adding to her reputation as a divine messenger. When Joan arrived at the court of Charles VII, she was able to identify the true king among a group of men, proving the authenticity of her divine mission. She declared that she could lift the siege of Orleans, a crucial city under English control. The French court, though skeptical, gave her mail armor, and she led the troops to victory. Joan's presence and leadership inspired her soldiers, and they fought with renewed courage. Joan continued her military campaigns, urging Charles to move into Burgundian territory to reach Reims for his coronation. Charles was crowned king in Reims on July 17, 1429, with Joan and her parents in attendance. However, Joan's success was short-lived. She was captured by the English in May 1430 and abandoned by Charles, who did not pay her ransom. Joan was held in various prisons and eventually brought to Rouen for a trial. The trial, led by Bishop Pierre Cauchon and clerics from the University of Paris, accused her of heresy, focusing on her divine voices and her wearing of male clothing. Despite the efforts of her accusers to confuse and trick her, Joan remained steadfast and practical in her responses. She was ultimately found guilty and burned at the stake on May 30th, 1431, at the age of 19. Joan of Arc's legacy lived on, and she became a symbol of courage and faith. Her story, intertwined with Christine de Pizan's, highlights the strength and resilience of women in the Middle Ages. Both women, in their own ways, fought against the limitations placed on them and left an indelible mark on history. Joan of Arc's story is one of extraordinary courage and conviction. At just 19, she faced the terrifying prospect of being burned at the stake. Despite the immense pressure, she remained true to her beliefs, even when it meant sacrificing her life. Her journey from a humble peasant girl to a national hero of France is a testament to the power of faith and determination. Joan's conviction was rooted in her belief that she was guided by divine voices. This belief put her at odds with the established church, which demanded adherence to its authority. When threatened with torture, Joan initially recanted, agreeing to wear women's clothing and deny her visions. However, just 4 days later, she reclaimed her male clothing and her faith, declaring that she had only recanted out of fear. The church condemned her for heresy and idolatry, and on May 30th, 1431, Joan was burned at the stake in Rouen. Her last words were a simple, powerful plea: "Jesus, Jesus." Joan's legacy lived on, inspiring countless people. After the 100 Years' War, efforts were made to clear her name. In 1456, the French annulled her conviction, and in 1920, she was canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church. Her story has been retold in countless works of art, literature, and film, each adding to her enduring legacy. Clothing in the Middle Ages was more than just a means of protection. It was a powerful symbol of identity, status, and even moral standing. Women played a crucial role in the textile industry, from spinning and weaving to embroidery. The Beguine tapestry, a 224-foot-long embroidered work, tells the story of the Norman conquest and is a testament to the skill and artistry of medieval women. Textiles could also carry deep symbolic meaning. For example, sumptuary laws dictated what people were allowed to wear, reinforcing social hierarchies. Marguerite Kemp, a devout Christian, faced criticism for her extravagant clothing, which she later repented of. She then wore a hair shirt as a form of penance, a painful reminder of her past sins. Cross-dressing was not uncommon in medieval literature and history. Women who dressed as men often did so for various reasons, from personal safety to the pursuit of education. For instance, a young woman in Krakow, Poland, attended the university in male clothing for 2 years, nearly completing her degree before her identity was discovered. She later joined a convent and became an abbess, a remarkable story of determination and resilience. Joan of Arc and these other women show that clothing and appearance were powerful tools in the medieval world. Whether through divine inspiration, artistic skill, or personal conviction, these women defied the norms of their time and left a lasting impact on history. Their stories remind us of the strength and resilience of the human spirit, even in the face of overwhelming adversity.